So that was a proper test match. Gone from watching New Zealand versus Japan, 15 tries, to England against South Africa, 1 try. Close as it can get, 1 point into England taking it down 12 points to 11. That's Test rugby, man. If you wanted a game which is prep for World Cup time, put that one in the bank for players on both teams because that kind of experience is going to come in useful. It was really a game of two halves. South Africa dominant in that first half, but really unable to convert on their chances. England kind of similar in the second half. England very good in that first half at remaining in touch despite not really being in the game in terms of much action with the ball. Pollard got us kicked off with a penalty. Itoje got a yellow card. England were under pressure, conceding penalties. During that yellow card, the South African lineout doesn't operate well. They proved pretty early on that their maul was going to be a weapon. But the throw, commentators said it was marks rather than the jumpers. It just wasn't happening. I'd have to replay and look at all those lineouts kind of frame by frame. At least one of them I remember going way above Vermeulen's head, so it seemed to be the throw that was the issue. But that was troubling, I guess, if you're a South African fan and England were getting out from being under the pump with those kind of let-offs. During the Itoje yellow card, England kick a penalty. They win the yellow card period 3-0. It was like South Africa were going in for the kill, and not only did England manage to survive it, but they managed to strike back, which was, pretty impressive. They hadn't even been in the South African 22, and yet they scored points. And Nkosi got his try with some quick hands and some building of phases. Pollard missed the conversion, but Farrell kicked the penalty pretty soon after, so it was 6 points to 8 at halftime. Very close on the scoreboard, but you look at the numbers at halftime. South Africa had 200 run meters to England's 78. Possession and territory was like 33-67 to South Africa. That was possession. Territory was 78-22. So it was all being played down at England's end. But interestingly, the tackling rates from both sides were pretty exceptional. England were at 90%. That's why they only conceded 8 points, along with some misfiring lineouts from the box. And South Africa were at a massive 97%. They only missed one tackle in that first half. Not that they had to make that many because they had most of the ball. I think England made 79, South Africa made 29. But yeah, it was definitely defence ruling the day. Penalties conceded halftime 6-2, so England conceding the 6. That was really, really starting to add up, and it was adding to all that pressure. South Africa going for the line a lot, not going for the posts. And that line-out just wasn't paying dividends. The line-out for South Africa was 9 from 11 in that first half. And the 3 that they missed were all pretty costly. So that's one thing, if you're a Bok fan, you're going to be pretty upset that was potentially quite a few points not taken, basically. If you're an England fan, you'd be pretty damn happy that you were still within 2 points at half-time, and then hoping that the coach was going to turn things around at half-time. And the second half, it was a lot more England. They had a lot of the ball. There were a few guys subbed, like Etzebeth got subbed pretty much straight into half-time. Mercer came on for Curry. And then not long after, Daly got a long-range penalty to give England the first lead of their match. The lead would change 3 times throughout the game. So this is what I mean about it being a proper test match. It was tight for the whole game. So after Daly's one, Farrell got one off the post. Yes, and then Pollard kicked a penalty, Farrell kicked one, and it was the final score. Pollard did miss a penalty in like the 76th minute. It grazed the post. And what the hell does that say? Just short. Oh, Farrell's one wasn't off the post. It was just short. I couldn't read my own writing. But yeah, so both Farrell and Pollard missed penalties. They were both really close. but not quite. Pollard's one he probably should have got. It was like 45 metres out, straight in front. You'd back him to kick that most times. Farrell's one wasn't the accuracy, it was just the distance. Second half, like as I said, the English had a lot more of the ball. Speaking of kind of lost chances, there were at least a couple of times when England were on attack and Johnny May was screaming for the ball. And that guy is that fleet-footed, you'd usually beat him to back him to beat at least one defender. And they didn't give him the ball. They would perhaps see that he was still half covered or covered, ran the ball back in. I would have liked to seen him get the ball because he's a really elusive runner. He's got gas. He runs really good lines, good balance. So it was a pity. Potentially points left out there for England as well. So South Africans will be disappointed that they didn't convert those line-out chances into mauls and potentially points. And England, likewise, with some of their backs who look pretty sharp at times. By full time, it was possession territory 60-40 to the box, so it did tighten up a bit. Interesting stat in the second half. Tackling for England actually went up from 90. It went to 91%, whereas South Africa dropped down from 97 down to 82. So obviously part of that is England having a lot more ball, making them ask more questions of that Bok defence, but guys weren't making tackles that they perhaps had in that first half. Yeah, it was, I'm going to get to it. The talking point of the game is probably the final act of the game. Esterhuizen is running the ball, and there were some big hits in this game, I should say. Esterhuizen made one of them. Nkosi hit May pretty well. Khaleesi got hit by somebody. Esterhuizen hit Farrell. Maybe that was in Farrell's mind because right towards the end of the game, Vermeulen got a big hit on him as well. He got up those, a credit to him. Farrell took a while to get up from his hit, but he must have remembered because right on 82 minutes, the Boks were attacking. They're behind. Previously, they've not set for a drop goal. They had a fair few phases in the English half. I thought they might be setting for a drop goal right towards full time. Did in New Zealand, and perhaps they thought they could go a few more phases, but Farrell, interestingly, again, stripped Diaka of the ball. Final act of the game, I haven't read anything on social media about it yet because I haven't seen the Ireland-Italy game yet, so I'm avoiding all social media because I'm going to be watching it after it's been finished, so I'm not wanting to see what the result is. But Farrell hits Esterhuizen kind of with a shoulder. My initial reaction is, oh, that's going to be a penalty. I may have my bias to my kind of Bok brothers being a Southern Hemisphere guy on here, but my initial reaction was, oh, that's going to be a penalty. That was a shoulder. The game kind of ends, there's celebrations, and then the TMO decides to have a look at it, or Angus Gardner decides to have a look at it. And then they show another angle of it slowed down, and my initial reaction is again, ooh, that looks pretty bad. That's probably going to be a penalty. And even Stuart Barnes, because we had the English commentary over here in New Zealand, is saying he's going to be lucky to get away with that one. Angus Gardner says, nah, he wrapped the arm enough. Game over. That's going to be a talking point. As I say, I may have my bias on here, but I thought it looked like a penalty. I briefly did, before I just headed out, I did look on Twitter very briefly because someone sent me a message which showed a shot from Snyman on one of the English guys, which was kind of similar. It was a shoulder. I was only like a 3-second clip, so I didn't really get to see it from multiple angles or anything, but it did look kind of similar. So if nothing else, it looks like perhaps the referee's been consistent, that he thought that was not a penalty. But for mine, initial reaction, having only seen it, the initial, I think they showed it live, and they showed it like replayed twice. That's all I've seen it. Looked like a penalty to me, but I will admit Southern Hemisphere bias is probably there. So, yeah, England managed to hang on. That was the end of the game, and they win it by a point. Yeah, as I said, they managed to even up the stats. They had a lot better play in the second half. Both sides, again, probably rue some missed chances. South Africa with the hands, sometimes some of the knock-ons were pretty poor. Yeah, the lineouts were pretty painful. England defence, man, 91 is solid. You're going to prove a pretty hard team to beat if you can tackle 91%, and they did. South Africa maybe go for the drop goal. Yeah. So that was my take on it. Both sides could have won it. If Farrell had kicked that one penalty a few metres longer, it might not have been even as tight as it was. If Pollard had kicked that 45-metre penalty, they could have got it. If Gardner had given that last one as a penalty, maybe they would have stolen it at the end. If Marx's line-up throwing had been a bit better, man, there's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. But at the end of the day, congratulations to England, man. I mean, Itoje and Wilson both had 13 tackles, which is good numbers. Peter Setutoy also had 13. Damon Delende had 72 run meters and beat 5 defenders. I think Johnny May beat 4. So both sides had good performers. Tight game. I know it's not like a spectacle with 100 points in it, but I was tense at the end of the game. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm a Kiwi fan, but I was tense. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a very entertaining game. Pretty chuffed to see that, getting up at 3:55 in the morning over here to watch it. I'm not disappointed. I think both sides will improve from here. I think there were a few things, as I said, which were a bit perhaps disjointed for both teams. But we'll see how things go. Big room to improve for both sides. And I forgot to mention Shields. Brad Shields knocked the ball on at one point where England were attacking. I knew there was another missed chance they had. So it was May not getting the ball, and Shields knocked it on. They probably should have just taken it to ground and kept playing when they were right attacking on the South African line. So both sides had chances. As you can see from the scoreline, very few converted, but they were there. Both these times, teams just sharpen things up, and they're going to prove hard to beat next week. England have got New Zealand, which is going to be a big challenge for them. And South Africa head over to France. So very much looking forward to those games. You guys let me know your thoughts on the game. Tried not to talk too much about controversial decisions because it's not usually my bag. I prefer to talk about the game itself. But it's obviously a talking point, so you guys can let me know if how I'm seeing it is how you guys saw it, or if I'm being a bit biased. Please let me know. And just talk about the guys you thought played well, who played poorly, and you guys let me know your thoughts. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.